Hello, and welcome to Retroscoping, a podcast tracing the evolution of feature animation. We are journeying through the films of...
La 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 la. La 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 la.
Yes, we didn't warm up before recording.
The
Must do it now.
rain in Spain falls mostly on the plains.
That's not it.
It's not. Where do they fall?
Mainly in the plains. Not mostly.
Oh.
You're ridiculous. Your homework is to go watch My Fair Lady.
I can live with that homework.
Okay, it's not on our list though. We're journeying through the films of the studio that started it all, Walt Disney Studios. And this week we are delving into the 8th feature, 1946's Make Mine Music. And boy, do I wish you luck getting a hold of this.
It's not on Disney Plus, and it's not on Blu-ray. It's not on anything except for some really terrible DVDs, and presumably a VHS back in the day.
But first, I'm your host, Alexa.
And I'm Nathan.
Nathan, why are we qualified to host this podcast?
Well, you know, I did play the baritone in my high school band, so I think I'm qualified to opine on musical segments.
That definitely directly applies.
Absolutely.
Did it dance, your baritone?
Not while I was watching.
Ah.
But if animated films have taught me anything, it's that inanimate objects do a lot of things when you're not watching.
I mean, I think that your baritone then took to heart dance like no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. So Make Mine Music is yet another animated anthology film.
Number 3.
But we're pretty much halfway there.
Yeah, it's true. We only have Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, and
Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And then we are back to real films with real stories.
I'm very excited to get to Cinderella. I just gotta make it to Cinderella.
All right. So, what do we need to know about Make Mine Music?
It premiered April 20th of 1946. Originally, it had 10 segments. We only had to watch 9.
Yes. The opening segment of the film, sort of Hatfield and McCoy's-esque Country Bumpkins feuding film, was removed because of the animated gunplay.
Yes, The Martins and the Coys was removed from the US DVDs for quote-unquote comic gunplay.
So, I don't think I've ever actually seen that.
The nice thing about the age of the internet is that even though you may not be able to get your hands on a copy of Make Mine Music, you can probably Google search any of these shorts in particular, and someone's probably uploaded a janky version of it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the actual ability of watching this film as Walt intended it back in the day. I'm pretty sure you can't.
No.
Because the DVD is missing the initial segment, and I spent probably the first 15 minutes of the film trying to find a way to get it to actually play in the original aspect ratio. I was unable to do it. I thought it was because I just didn't understand our DVD player. But it turns out it's just incredibly badly adapted for DVD. So if you do find a copy of the DVD, you will, as I did, spend a lot of the film wondering, why is this person's head not in frame? Why are we missing that bit of text? A lot of it just disappears off the top and bottom of the screen.
To be fair, I'm not cultured enough to have noticed or been bothered by this at all, but I know that it bothered you a great deal.
People's heads were missing!
They didn't need them.
So, it's a tough one, and I'm curious why it's not on Disney Plus and if it will ever make it there as a fully, properly restored edition. My guess would be that maybe they had some trouble with the music licensing, because some of these songs are at least recent and modern enough that you would have to go and renegotiate streaming licenses for them.
I honestly have no idea. I don't know that would be a thing, because as Disney, you usually buy things like that up front or have them make those songs for you so you own them. I don't know.
I mean, I think all of these are pre-existing songs. Or not all of them, but a lot of them.
Maybe. But yeah, Make My Music was never re-released in theaters, and mostly it's been chopped up for parts. So you have probably run into some of these shorts before. Like, I definitely have seen before Casey at Bat and Peter and the Wolf, Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet. Like, these are things that they kind of ran on the Disney Channel, I think, once in a blue moon. I've run into
those two in
them
particular
elsewhere.
I've seen, yeah.
That was 3 of them, so which 2 are you talking about?
Casey at Bat and Peter and the Wolf.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of there are still plenty of them that I have never seen, but that's because they are very slow, shall we say?
Yes, the diplomatic way to describe much of this film is to say that it is a meditative experience.
Fantasia is so much more lively and fun and a breath of fresh air, I think, in comparison.
When we first turned this on, my initial thoughts after a few segments were, oh, this sort of feels like a Fantasia but for contemporary music, with more folk and jazz and pop utilized in the score. Obviously, it gets a bit off-brand later on with things like The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met and their particular adaptation of Casey and the Bat. But it felt like off-brand Fantasia in a lot of ways. And turns out at least one of the segments is an unused Fantasia segment, which they have just set to different music, which kind of defeats the whole approach of Fantasia.
Well, I mean, they, at the time, were not intending to do any more Fantasia, so maybe they were throwing that mentality out.
Yeah, clearly.
So, on the one hand, though, this film's budget was $1.35 million, and by 1951, so just 5 years later, the film had made back a total of $3.275 million. So they were doing something right. Like, as much as we did not necessarily enjoy our viewing, they made a lot of money on this film, and it was the right call to make it and produce it and distribute it.
Well, there you go.
Just keep in mind that it's still World War II. We're gonna keep saying it.
Yeah.
So Disney is dealing with his artists being drafted or volunteering for the war, and the studio is also producing propaganda shorts. I am a little unclear about the history of how much that was a thing that they had to do and a thing that they chose to do. But a lot of their effort that was left within the studio was being put towards those propaganda shorts. So whoever was left was making Make Mine music.
That would be an interesting side episode to do. Look at some of the propaganda shorts. So I feel like we end up referring to them a lot.
Just for fun? Mm-hmm. Just for fun.
So, since I assume neither of us have actually seen this in its complete form before, what were your overall impressions?
I have decided to award this film the most boring Disney Film Award.
It is pretty slow for a lot of its runtime. I think there are individual pieces which I really enjoy, but there's a lot that just seems to be filling time. I think the best material for me is actually the jazz material.
Oh, really?
Well, you really like All the Cats Join In.
Oh,
which
sure.
Is jazz material.
Okay, fair.
And I quite thoroughly enjoyed After You've Gone.
It was fine.
I found, for whatever reason, that the more traditional short material in this, Casey at Bat, The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met, to some degree Peter and the Wolf, I don't know, it didn't really resonate with me. They seemed very talky.
Surprisingly, for a anthology that's supposed to be about music.
Yeah, and I think all just kind of a little too long and shaggy.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised how long this movie was, considering that, Dumbo was 60 minutes, and I was very surprised that they had this many shorts to put in there. Like, even the Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos had far fewer shorts.
Mm-hmm. Granted, some of these shorts are quite short.
Short shorts.
Yeah.
Who wears short shorts? Make My Music.
Make My Music, wear short shorts. That's a lot of words.
But yeah, let's start maybe talking about the different shorts that we actually got to watch.
Yeah.
There does exist the Martins and the Coys I think on some releases of the DVD in other countries. And also other countries just don't get a release of the DVD at all. It is impossible to find there. So this is, I think, for Disney fans who are completists, this is the white whale, is my understanding. It's the one you can't get.
So, since that segment is not actually in the film we watched, we open with Blue Bayou.
Blue Bayou.
Which is the segment which was originally intended for Fantasia to be scored to Claire de Lune. It's a fine piece of animation with a stork.
No, it's not a stork.
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
An egret.
With an egret flying about a blue bayou with some nice multiplane and painterly effects. And it's been rescored here to a new song, Blue Bayou, by the Ken Darby Singers.
Yeah, I think I finally understand the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland. Because when you get into the boats, you're in this swamp, and you go by a restaurant called Blue Bayou. It always seemed incredibly random, but it's just this very serene drifting through the swamp of Louisiana, and it didn't seem to have any correlation with pirates until you get to A Skull and Crossbones, and from there descend into the dark depths of Pirates of the Caribbean. But I assume it is based off this short, which is still a weird choice to make, but at least it came from somewhere.
Next time we go back to Texas, I'll have to drive you down to the bayou. You can see one in person.
I mean, I feel like I've seen a lot of swampy bits when we visit Texas. I don't know, it's going to look a whole lot different. Do they have egrets?
I don't know. I would assume so.
Okay.
If it's here.
Do you have any egrets about watching this film?
I have so many egrets. This is another part where, they're just parts of the song where all you see are the egret's feet dangling into frame.
Okay, well that's because our aspect ratio was off.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's when I started Googling.
I really didn't notice. I was like, oh, we're supposed to be watching its feet rippling in the pond. Well, look at those beautiful ripples. I was transfixed. But my favorite short of all of these was the second one we watched, so it's all downhill from here. All the Cats Join In was a really fun short. It's got a ton of energy. The designs are beautiful, and I believe are in a style that is attributed to Fred Moore.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
I told you. Fred Moore is one of the 9 Old Men, and he has a particular style where you have these kind of like noodly humans, I feel like, and they have the traditional like little dot black eyes. They look really cute, but they sound like Coraline when I describe them like that. And they're so lively in the way that they move, and they're very fluid in how they move.
It's also a short that really plays up the art of animation. It's constantly being drawn as you're watching it by a pencil on screen, and they do clever things like having the characters jump into something that's not quite drawn yet, and the animator having to work overtime to catch up and give them somewhere to land. It's great jazzy music by Benny Goodman. It's got real life and energy, and I actually always really enjoy, because I feel like there's very little of it, when Disney kind of indulges a little bit of kind of 50s modern cool looks and styles. It, I think, anticipates a little bit of some of the interesting work you'll see from UPA coming out, which brings just a different look and feel, which is more modern and clean-lined and just really kind of a joy to watch on screen. If you have to seek out only one short from this film, I think it is the one I'd recommend most.
Oh, definitely. I mean, honestly, watching it, I feel like there was so much more energy in the characters and the dancing than there really was in the music. Like, to me, it felt like they were dancing to something else, and the music was too slow to match them. But I think part of why I love it so much is I'm a big fan of the Archie comics. You know, Archie and Veronica and Betty and Jughead. Like, it feels very much like that 1950s, let's go down to the malt shop sort of a thing and put a coin in the jukebox. And so I think that's part of why I love it so much. But also that magic pencil is just a delightful construct.
Yeah. Also, apparently, one of the mildly censored segments of this film, there was a bit more nudity in the original screening.
Oh, it was quite scandalous.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes, they have a teenage girl hop out of her clothes, into the shower, hop out of the shower.
Into a towel.
Into a towel.
Another thing nicely provided by the animator at just the right moment.
At just the right moment. But yeah, she's definitely topless with her back to you for a few good seconds on screen. Yeah, they're trying to be tasteful. Maybe, debatably. But overall, I think a really, really fun short.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so in love with how they move. And the little sister who wants to follow her big sister to the malt shop. And just really sweet and lovely character moments like that. Like, this is a really good, I think, example of animating life into the characters on screen, even if they're there for just a little bit.
Yeah. And because Disney has, in many ways, such a defined house style, there's a way you expect Disney characters and worlds to look. I always enjoy when they break with the house style a little bit because they have the world's best animators at their studio. Incredibly talented people. And it's always fun to get them, to see them flex their muscles, try new things, experiment with different approaches.
Which is why I think the next short is such a disappointment.
I would barely even call it a short.
All right, so this is A Ballad in Blue with the song Without You, sung by Andy Russell. Mostly this short is kind of just a dolly into a window where then we watch a tree turn colors and pan across the ground to some trees that don't do anything. But behind them, the colors change. And then we dolly out. The end. I think I would put my money down that this is the cheapest short in the entirety of Make Mine music.
Easily. There's exactly one sort of interesting effect where the water ripples down across the window.
But the thing is,
that's it.
I'm not entirely sure that the water effect is animation. I feel like that's just them filming water and then overlaying that on top of their animation.
Entirely possible. Yeah, it is mostly a nice tone painting that then has some Photoshop filters applied to it.
Like, really bad filters.
It was about this point with this short which I thought, oh, yes, I see. This is what Fantasia would have been with no money and less talent. I mean less talent perhaps in the sense of there are less people available to work. Not that the people working on this film aren't talented, because of course they are. But they have no money to work with.
And, maybe not a lot of time. Maybe this is the last one they did. And goodness knows, in production, things get made at different times and then are outputted in different orders all the time. So, keeping that in mind. Next up is Casey at Bat. Or Casey at the Bat, as it is listed in the film. But I don't think anyone says Casey at the Bat.
Casey at Bat sounds cleaner.
I believe all the voices in this segment are voiced by Jerry Colonna. And it's a famous poem by Ernest Thayer. I can't say that I ever read this poem as a kid, but I am familiar with the short. So I think that's...
I do think I must have encountered the poem as a child.
You're a boy.
Yeah, that's true.
So you must like baseball. All boys like baseball.
That is the theory.
That our parents believed.
But yeah, it's not really much of a story, is it?
Well, here's the thing I realized after watching the short and going, wow, that was a weird ending. I realized I didn't really like Casey that much, so I guess it's probably better that he strikes out. Because theoretically it is supposed to be about a pompous, overconfident batter who thinks he's so great that he intentionally throws the first 2 strikes. We don't actually have any proof that he's any good. We just have a lot of proof that he's confident that he's that good. And so when he misses the 3rd strike, we don't really have any data to prove that he should have been able to hit that.
Certainly the crowd seems to believe he should have been able to hit it. The crowd fawns over Casey. A crowd full of the dumb blondes from Beauty and the Beast.
No. The crowd is full of a sea of men, and the only 4 women at this baseball game are all apparently in the dugout with Casey, yes, fawning over him. But there are no women in that crowd, by the way.
Apparently, they actually inserted non-existent lines into the poem about how women don't know anything about baseball, but they're here for Casey, because Casey's such a hunk.
That's not part of the original poem?
Apparently not.
They wrote that in? Seriously?
Seriously. I am 65% confident about that. I read it on the internet.
And the internet is always right.
Always. Kids, the internet is never right. Never listen to the internet. Ask your parents.
Because parents are always right.
More often than the internet.
Check your local library.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, how did you feel about Casey at the bat?
Yeah, I just didn't enjoy the experience. I didn't really like the character designs. I didn't really like the poem. I didn't really like the reading. It just was kind of macho and garish and unpleasant to watch.
Yeah, I feel like this is the predecessor to Gaston.
Yeah.
And that makes me inherently not like him, and that makes me inherently not want to have to sit here for 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, there's not really sympathetic characters in it.
No.
It's supposed to be a lesson about overconfidence and, how it'll ruin everything.
I mean, I don't really feel like watching the film that what I picked up from it was overconfidence is bad. I feel like I picked that up from someone's log line on the internet afterward. I was like, I guess that's technically what it's about.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the film does kind of a weirdly bad job of telegraphing, explaining why Casey is doing what he's doing.
I think the film spends so much time building Casey up and showing us how much people love him that that's so distracting from the story and moral that is supposed to be happening that you don't really notice that. And that's maybe why the ending doesn't really land for me. And feels very odd because we've spent so much time building him up as if I'm supposed to also love this character. And I don't. But then when he fails, I feel weirdly unsatisfied. Because it's not like he did anything horrible. It's not like he's a bad person. I mean, he might be, but he hasn't actively done anything horrible in the course of this short to make me want him to have retribution. So, I feel very unsatisfied at the end of this.
And it's kind of a weird fake-out ending where he swings and then we cut to idyllic scenes of people being happy and rejoicing elsewhere about something else. Actually, everything is terrible back at the baseball field because Casey missed a swing.
The one part I did like about this short is there's some animation that they reuse several times of the opposing baseball team just throwing the ball impossibly fast around the different bases into the pitcher. And I happen to really enjoy that particular clip of animation. So I was very happy that they showed it to me multiple times. I wish baseball was that fast. Unfortunately, neither of us are sports fans. So if you came here for that...
May I recommend dozens of other enthusiastic sports podcasts
that we don't know the names of. All right, afterwards, we move on to Two Silhouettes, which I'm just going to tell you is sung by Dinah Shore, who is an American big band singer. She's an actress and television personality, and the top-charting female vocalist of the 1940s. Basically, she was the Doris Day before there was Doris Day.
All right.
And I just don't feel like anyone knows her name. Or at least I didn't know her name, and therefore I assume no one else knows her name. So if you are a Dinah Shore fan, please write in to let me know what of her songs I should be listening to.
I can't say this one made much of an impression on me. It's a short that is essentially rotoscoped silhouettes of ballet dancers doing their thing, and not a whole lot more than that.
I really enjoyed when they finally got them out of dancing in an not even an animated garden, in a backdrop of a garden. And they took them up and had her dance like through the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually quite nice. And like one of my complaints when I'm watching animated content is often, but why is this animated?
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole point of putting it in the animation medium is that you can do crazy and wonderful, fantastical things. It gets there a bit late, but it finally gets there. And it's like, wait a second, we don't have to have them in a normal world. We can have them dance through the stars. And I found that slightly delightful.
I think that is an excellent follow-up to Dancing with the Stars, the sequel series, Dancing Through the Stars.
I'm down.
Where we send dancers to space.
Yes! And choreograph dances in the astronaut suits with little lane lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay,
That
I'm
would,
down.
in fact, be spectacular.
That would be wonderful.
That is a Disney Plus original I would watch.
Definitely. But also, the Weepies short with the two outline dancers, like, I think is very moving. And so there is something that I do really, really like about this short.
I think dance is incredibly kinetic on film. I love getting to film dance. I love getting to see it utilized in really interesting ways. But apart from the dancing up through the skies, this is a very kind of straight on camera set, see them sort of dance in the distance. And I feel like it could have benefited from a little more ambition, a little bit more swooping in and around them and doing interesting things.
I also honestly would have liked it if the two dancers were rotoscoped as different colors, which obviously, like, it would add a higher component of complication because there's a lot of limbs going on there, which is why I imagine it was an easy call to just say, just make them both the same color. They'll just be a blob together. We don't really need to know where everything is. It'll be fine. So it would have taken them a lot more time and effort to rotoscope the individual limbs at any given position of the dance.
So the film, for the most part, alternates between these kind of musical mood pieces and more traditional shorts. So we go from Two Silhouettes to Peter and the Wolf, which is the one I'm probably most familiar with outside of this film. Incredibly catchy piece of classical music. I sometimes will whistle it to myself while walking to work.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
I mean, I don't whistle it as often as I whistle the theme from A Bug's Life, but you know.
Oh, that's a great theme also. Yes. Anyway, listen, going into this, I know that Peter and the Wolf, both as a musical composition and this short, are somewhat, like, critically acclaimed. Like, they're very well thought of in history. So I think I expected more of it than it had to give. Mm-hmm. So I set myself up for disappointment, and that's on me.
It's, it didn't hold up as well as I remembered it. And I hate to say this because, of course, who doesn't love Sterling Holloway and his gentle voice? But man, is this short over-narrated.
Well, there's only music, so they had to tell you exactly what's happening on screen.
Yeah, there were many points at which I feel like the filmmakers could have been confident enough to just let the animation carry the story for large stretches. And
confidence in the audience hasn't been invented yet.
Well, they tried confidence in the audience with Fantasia, and it didn't go well for them.
Okay, fair. Also, to be fair, I understood Fantasia at the tender age of toddlerhood.
So, yeah, I mean, it's, again, like many of these shorts, a bit longer than I expected or feel like it needed to be. And
I feel like because it was, I would agree, over narrated, the music didn't get to shine in this one.
It didn't.
They spent all this time at the top of the short explaining to you how the different instruments are basically the voices of the different characters, and I was really excited for that, but I realized very quickly into the short that I was completely losing track of what sounds were even happening because I was just being talked to so overwhelmingly.
Yeah. And I was surprised I wasn't as won over by the character animation as I frequently am. With the exception of the wolf, who kind of is an interesting visual, it is very middle of the road in terms of design and animation and staging.
It's odd, but the wolf is my favorite character design out of all of them.
Yeah. It definitely is one of those areas where you start to feel like different templates are being reused. Like when the cat first shows up, it really feels like you're watching Pinocchio and Figaro interact.
Because Peter looks very much like Pinocchio's model.
Yeah. And at first the cat looks very much like Figaro. I feel like his proportions change later
Ultimately,
on.
he doesn't look like Figaro too much, but yeah. When they do the silhouette of him especially.
Yeah. So, another underwhelming short. And then we move on to After You've Gone.
Oh, yeah, I keep
another
forgetting
Benny
that one.
Goodman number. A sprightly little jazz piece that indulges a little bit of the Fantasia, making sound waves come alive kind of look. The instruments do their dancing and morphing and transforming, and you get piano keys splayed out through the sky, played by somewhat creepily disembodied fingers.
At least they make sense here, though. Like, when we had something similar in The Three Caballeros with, like, the lady's legs, like, that didn't make any sense. But this actually makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's, I think, a good balance between abstract and literal, and it's a short piece, but I think it's lively, I think it's fun, I think it does exactly what it came to do, and then it bows out.
Yeah, I think this actually could have had a pretty good place in Fantasia.
Mm-hmm. For sure. If Fantasia had had a bit more interest in jazz back then, yeah.
Well, I'm surprised that Fantasia doesn't really have a lot of dancing instruments. They do silhouettes of the orchestra and just let the music kind of speak for itself. But, yeah, animating fun dancing instruments along to the music that they are playing seems like a great idea.
Yeah. So then we go into Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, which I didn't know this because I have not seen this short before, but if you've seen Pixar's Umbrellas short, you've seen this short.
Well, this one came first. I happen to really like Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet. I think it's a very sweet short. And it's a very simple love story about two hats being separated. Life is hard when you're a hat.
Yeah, you lack agency.
It's true. It's true.
Johnny Fedora really undergoes a lot of trials and tribulations in this. He has pretty much the worst life a hat can have, being dragged through the mud and rain and beaten up and stepped on and otherwise abused for love.
He could have had a really nice life atop a man's head, though. He chooses to abandon the comfortable life that was offered to him in search of his true love. Mm-hmm. And in the end, they are reunited. It was
a twist
all
I
worth
did
it.
not see coming. Apparently, horses wear hats.
They could.
They could. They have heads.
Most of their heads are hatless, so ergo, they need hats.
Mm-hmm.
But guess who is in the short? Would you like some hints?
Sure.
This short is sung by a close harmony American singing group.
Oh, yes. They are on the title card. It's not the Everly Brothers, but
They are three sisters from the swinging and boogie woogie eras of music, which I didn't know boogie woogie was a type of music.
Mm-hmm.
They are mostly associated with World War II.
The Andrews Sisters.
Yay, you got it! Fun fact, as of 2013, they were, someone did some tallies, and it was decided that they are the best-selling female group of all time.
Huh.
It's been a few years since 2013, so I don't know if that has changed. But we also don't have, like, a lot of female groups, so...
That is a fairly rare artifact in modern time, yeah.
So they very well could still hold that title.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the female artists I am aware of are solo acts.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And they are going to be back in Melody Time.
Oh, boy.
Oh, girls! But yeah, so, I mean, I grew up with Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, so I'm very partial to it. I think mostly for nostalgia and just being a sucker for a good romance.
Mm-hmm.
If I could get on my soapbox one more time.
Please.
I just wish that Alice Bluebonnet could be as expressive a design as Johnny Fedora. I know it's a different time period, but and we still struggle with this a little bit today, but the art is so busy trying to make her beautiful that she's got hat Botox.
This is a fairly common and absolutely appropriate criticism of a lot of human animation and a lot of human character designs in animation. I never thought I would hear it applied to hats, but you're right.
Whereas Johnny Fedora he's got these big expressive eyes, he's super mushy, and it really does bother me that, like, that in this story, Johnny Fedora literally gets raked through the mud. He gets tussled and trampled and bent out of shape, and I feel like all of this is allowed to happen to his character because he's a male. Like, if it was a female chasing a man, like, none of that would be allowed to happen to her because, oh no, all of a sudden we would be scandalized or feel so bad for the character on screen. But because he's a man, I mean, beat him up, you know.
I mean, I suppose it's implied by the fact that Alice Bluebonnet also eventually is cut up and used as a hat for a horse, that she's been through her share of wear and tear as well.
But I would like there to be a little bit more equality in what we do with all genders, is all I'm saying.
Fair.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
All right. Taking that tiny step off the soapbox back onto the ground.
Ka-thunk.
Just in time to talk about our final short.
The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met.
The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met.
Which I think is very impressive that one man does all of the voices.
It is a very impressive voice performance.
By Nelson Eddy.
By Nelson Eddy. Again, like Peter and the Wolf, I feel like it might be a little over-narrated, but the combination of singing and talking and singing while talking, making it all feel sort of operatic, I think is very impressive. It's a neat little trick.
And also he has to sing in 3 different octaves.
Yeah.
Is that the correct word, octaves?
I don't know if literally he's singing different octaves, but he's trying to
play a tenor, a bass, and a something else.
Yeah. Yes, he does 3 different vocal ranges.
Thank you. That's what I meant.
Bass, baritone, and tenor.
There you go. I don't know about you, but I can bear his tone.
Yes, very dulcet tones. Very bearable.
Yeah. I am surprised by how this short turned out.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those shorts where I expected some sort of big fake out at the end. Not a fake out, he actually just died.
Yes.
Spoilers.
Yes, well, you know, warnings before you go watch it yourself or show it to little children. He will be harpooned.
Yes.
But he does go to heaven.
And sings with choirs of angels.
He is one. He is now a pink whale angel.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. I'm not sure that is a theologically attested fact, but apparently you become pink when you go to heaven.
I'm down. I think this short does have a lot of fun jokes for the cultured person.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nathan was laughing a lot more than I was when we go through the kind of dream sequence.
Where he plays a lot of different roles in a variety of different operas.
Yeah, like I vaguely got them, or at least found them kind of funny, and I think you actually got them.
I mostly just really enjoyed his performance in Mephistopheles, where we got to see a giant whale dressed as a devil.
Breathing fire.
Mm-hmm.
It was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mostly I just thought it was hilarious that he was playing the romantic lead to, a normal-sized, female woman.
Mm-hmm.
And him being a giant sperm whale and towering over people, by at least 20 feet.
They have a lot of fun with the size relationships in this film.
Yeah, and then he comes out dressed as a clown, and that was funny too, because he's a clown.
Yes. Lovely rendition of Pagliacci.
See, you get things, at least. You get them more than I do.
I think that's his name.
We cannot guarantee pronunciation.
But yeah, I think in general, this is probably the short I enjoyed / respected most, but like the others, it's just too long.
It's too long.
And structurally, it's a very strange choice to set all of this up, get us identifying with this charming whale who just wants to sing at the Met and has this unique opportunity only to die horribly because the head of the Metropolitan Opera is a moron.
I mean, if I must find a silver lining, I guess it is that this short will hopefully continue to convince audiences that whaling is wrong.
Yeah, you shouldn't wail or you might destroy a really gifted opera singer. That is the moral of the story. If, like most people, you were unable to actually watch this film, the basic thrust of it is that this whale has a miraculous gift to sing beautifully. He is heard by a sailor, which a newspaper attests was stone cold sober at the time.
It's very important.
Mm-hmm. The head of the Metropolitan Opera hears about it, thinks, oh, this whale must have swallowed an opera singer. And he wants to recruit a brand new voice for his opera, so he goes whaling to try and kill the whale and free the opera singer. He succeeds in killing the whale, only to find, no, he didn't swallow any opera singers. He can just sing. And now he's singing with the angels.
Poor Willie.
Poor Willie.
Poor Willie the whale.
And on that dark note, that's the end of Make Mine Music.
Ta-da!
I really wish it had been better, because I think there's plenty of potential for a Fantasia-type film that uses more contemporary or, at least kind of jazz-era music. I think could have been really interesting, could have been really beautiful, but I think the limitations on the budget, on the production timeline, on the scope of what they're able to accomplish just, makes it underwhelming. And underwhelming Fantasia is, well, like you said, the most boring Disney film.
It's going to be hard to beat.
Yep. Although, they've got the 80s, so...
I like the 80s. We'll get there. Thank you so much for sticking with us to the end of this show. If you enjoyed our podcast, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast player. You can write us at retroscoping@gmail.com or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Retroscoping. And please join us next time for Fun and Fancy Free, which you can stream on Disney+.
That one will be a lot easier to find.
100%. And even if you can't get around to Fun and Fancy Free, half of it is Mickey and the Beanstalk. So if you have access to that...
You got the good part.
I haven't actually seen the other part, but we'll get there.
We'll get there.
All right.
Well, that's all, folks. So, go live happily ever after.
Who wears short shorts? Make my music.
Make My Music, Wear Short Shorts.